baby. Tamia talks, baby.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tamia Talks podcast. I am here with parent coach Sharoya Ham and her son Jeremiah Ham. Welcome, guys.
Good morning. Well,
Thank you and welcome. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I see you rocking your Tamia Talk shirt. I love
I
it.
do.
Thank
I
you, thank you,
listen from
thank you for
all the
coming
way over
on.
here in South Africa. Yes, I do.
Yes, she's in South Africa, guys, which is crazy. Where are you located, Jeremiah?
I am down in West Philadelphia.
All right. Born
So,
and raised. Like
Yeah, I was gonna say born, but you're not born and raised.
All right. So, guys, I want to introduce you to parent coach Sharoya Ham. Parent coach Sharoya Ham is a behavior change specialist, and she is a licensed teacher with over 25 years of experience with working with at risk students and their families. Whew, that's a long time. Her favorite career, however, was a stay-at-home mom. She attributes to her three sons who are now 17, 19, and 22. So shout out to Miles and Malachi. And today we have Mr. Jeremiah.
the best one.
She attributes her career for teaching her endless lessons about parenting. For nearly a decade, Sharoya has shared the secrets she's learned as a mom, teacher, and parent coach with hundreds of families. So let's get into her educational background because she got that. Okay. Her graduate studies were in special education with an applied behavior analysis emphasis. She holds a New Jersey state teacher certification in secondary mathematics and graduate certificate in applied behavior analysis. Whew. Wow. First of all, mathematics and behavior. That's not,
Yeah.
that is not
The
for me.
commonality is simply solving problems,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Behavior solving problems, math solving problems.
I love it. I love it. I love it. She is passionate about helping parents who are overwhelmed with learning how to be calm, consistent, and confident. They are going to do the right thing. She believes every family can create the home environment they want by embracing one behavior change at a time. So I know you just said we just read your bio. You are from New Jersey, but you stated before you are in South Africa. Get a
That's
little bit into
correct.
that. How did you get to
Well,
South Africa?
good question. About 24 years ago, I married a man who I now call a pilot without a plane. He likes to go and move. So we have been married 24 years and I have moved 10 times. And he works for the US Peace Corps, United States' largest volunteer organization, international organization. And so that keeps us moving. And we just landed here in South Africa just a week ago.
Wow. So South Africa, how is that moving from New Jersey?
Well, I mean, it's gorgeous here. I think
Yeah.
Africa, the whole entire continent, is the best kept secret from Americans. It's unfortunate. I mean, Europeans are very aware of how beautiful and extraordinary this continent is.
Mhm.
Um, Yet we as Americans have been slow to understand. Yesterday, I went to on a shopping excursion and I was so overwhelmed by all the stores. There's so many stores, so big.
Mhm.
It was just more than I was exposed to. And I just left the US.
Yeah.
So it's very developed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, if you don't mind, I know that you are a parent coach. Can you talk a little bit about what your career is? Because I want this time to be a learning experience for me as well. I don't have kids. I know Jeremiah doesn't have kids, but talk a little bit about what a parent coach does and your career.
You know, life has a way of showing you where you belong. I never dreamt of being a parent coach. I never even heard of a parent coach. But the short story is that my son, my middle son, he had a learning challenge in school.
Okay.
And I eventually took him out of school and homeschooled him just for 6 months so we could get the situation under control.
Okay.
After that, parents came to me. They knew I had an educational background. At that time, I was a stay-at-home mom, and they just wanted to know, how did I dare make that decision to pull out my kid, knowing he had special needs? Um, and then I think they also watched me as I tried to advocate for him and all the other kids that went to the school and needed extra services. And I noticed that parents had a lot of shame. Not only a lot of shame, but they also just didn't know what to do, you know,
Yeah.
how to best support their kids. So with that said, parents started to seek me out and just like, can you help me figure out what I should do? And that's where it began. I didn't even know what to call it. I called myself a child advocate at that time. But what eventually I realized, I was still trying to work with kids and help kids who were struggling in school. But when I realized that parents, if I could just educate parents on how they can best help their kids
Yeah.
through homework, through behavior challenges, then I would be more impactful because they would use those strategies, not just for that one child, but for the whole family.
Okay. Good. So when you found out and you noticed a problem within your own home, was it immediately okay, I have to jump right on this. I have to help my own son. What was that like when you learned of this concern within your own family?
That's a good question because I'll tell you, parents, we tend to be in denial as long as we
Mhm.
can. My son, he was always having attention challenges
Okay.
since preschool. I mean, the teachers would
Okay.
tell me, but they would say, "Oh, he's such a lovely kid. He does all these extra things," and
I love
so
Miles.
there was a lot of good reports. So I just said, "Okay, well, whatever. Just ignore that part, right?" And it just kind of got harder and harder for him until seventh grade. And then at that point, no teacher told me all those good things about him. And I was like, this is weird because every single year I always get the same report. He's so nice. He's so helpful. Da 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 da. Mrs. Ham, we just love him. And in seventh grade, all of that stopped. And the reason why is because he was really struggling in school. So then he started to become a behavior problem.
Yeah.
Not major, but he was, you know, distracting other people, telling jokes.
Yeah.
So, you know, the class, he could hurry up and get over, you know, the class.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I know that you guys are originally from New Jersey, but you guys moved to South Africa. At the time was Miles, which is your middle child, for those who don't know. Were you guys in America when you learned of his behavior problem within the class, or were you guys over in South Africa?
No, at that time we were in Zambia, which is Southern Africa, but a different
Okay.
country. And so the resources were not all there as we would have had in the US. And so at that point, I was really stressed. I was considering about moving back to the US
Okay.
just so I could help him meet his needs.
Okay. Now, did you feel as though, because I know in your bio, you wrote that you um, had a certification in applied behavior analysis. Do you feel as though that helped you when you had to deal with it within the home?
Well, at that time, I didn't have
Oh, you didn't have
that
it.
certification. No, in fact, it was after that I realized I met someone and they were a behavior analysis, and you generally will find behavior analysts, excuse me, working with children with autism or some behavioral challenge, and they create this intense intervention plan to help the child grow in whatever
Okay.
area that they lack. But
Mhm.
they also teach parents how to implement those interventions. Interventions.
Yeah.
And so maybe you have a kid who just doesn't even know like autism can't brush his teeth. This person goes in there and teaches the child and the parent how to go through those steps. So I thought, wow, they teach the parent how to implement things that are really good to help the child develop. And so when I met that behavior analyst, she told me about her job, and I thought, let me just go to school for that.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up with that. But the truth of the matter is, behavior analysis is simply the science of behavior. There is a formula to behavior. We all do what we do because we want something, we want to get away from something, or we need something. I generally say three things, but generally we want something, or we don't want something, or we want to get escape from something. And so once we understand that, then we can change our behavior.
Wow, I didn't even think of behavior that it had a formula to it. So you want, you need, and you want to get away from something. Wow, I didn't even think
about
of
everything we do is because we want to get something.
Yeah.
We want to avoid something. And where our behavior really becomes intense is when we need something. And so I kind of put that in a different category when I'm teaching parents about behavior.
And if you don't mind, I kind of want to shift the microphone to Jeremiah, if you don't mind, open up about it. When you recognized and you noticed that your mom realized that there was a problem within the behavior from your brother in the household, how was that as a sibling? Because I know I got 4 sisters, and when something affects one, sometimes it affects all. So how was that being the sibling?
It was interesting because my mom has always been a fantastic teacher, one who did a lot of work and was very diligent in making sure that we got our work done at home. So I do remember multiple times when it got to the time where she was willing to take Miles out of school, she proposed the question to all of us, and I was like, absolutely not. I was not planning on coming home to do work with her, especially just because I remember sometimes she used to kind of stress me out just because she was such a good teacher that she was one of those people that's like, no, you're going to sit here and you're going to work until you figure this out. And sometimes I was a little bit of a person that liked to be coddled. So I could do that in a school setting versus all the way doing it at home. But it was really interesting to see the growth from Miles because like I said, I was able to hear, or like, excuse me, like she said, I was able to hear some of those comments and stuff that the teachers had made. And that were seemingly somewhat out of character for Miles. So to see them transition, or at least him transition from that to a better and stronger foundation at home was really interesting to see. So I was really proud of his growth and especially what he's been able to accomplish now, just from the time period that he's been able to work with her. So he did a really good job, or both of them.
Oh my, and we should have had Miles on today to talk and just have a conversation because we're talking about him, which he could have been on, but we love you, Miles. Shout out to you. And so I love that you opened up and you recognized within your own household that there was a problem. You saw that there was concern with your sibling, but how was that being in the house? Did you feel as though you had to step aside and really assist? Did you have to assist with Miles at times? Or did you like say, okay, I'm gonna let my mom do what she does because she is 25 years of experience being a teacher. She
Yeah,
has it in the bag.
I think that I kind of just, let her do her. I think my job has always been my job just to be his brother, like, and not judge him or like I was willing to play my role. My job wasn't to go in there and teach him or make him feel like I was trying to
His parent.
be like a little bit of an overseer, like, bro, you got to do this, you got to do that. Like, no, I was just there to encourage him and be like, no, I'm proud of you, or maybe you can do this. But my role was to be his brother, I believe. And so um, I wasn't there to step on my mom's toes. Like she's a really good teacher, so I had no doubt that she was doing what she needed to do, and that it would reflect positively on him. So
There's nothing like a sibling's love. So I thank you for that. So shifting the mic back over to Sharoya Ham, how is it now dealing with the pandemic, being a parent coach? There's a need for that. So get into a little bit being a parent coach now in today's society.
You know, it is very needed right now. Parents are feeling just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
A lot of them are isolated, and just really haven't found a way to have their own time to refresh and renew. So they're just running on E.
Yeah.
They're doing exceptional work. And what I find is in my job, I feel like I'm the cheerleader for parents. I need for you to understand you are doing a good job. Yes, there's always more we can do and improve. But the fact that parents have held their households together all this time and their kids are not in the hospital, they're not in the hospital. I mean, that's enough. You have done enough. And so my job is to really come in there and encourage parents to hold up, wait a minute, let's look at what you're doing well. And let's see what we can actually take off your plate. What is just being unreasonable, especially now, because I think parents are feeling like the longer they're out of school, the more they are losing out on their education.
Yeah.
Yes, they are losing out on the things that we valued before. Reading, writing, math, they still are valuable. But what is most important right now are the life lessons our kids are gaining. How to handle these times, moments of stress. How to handle when you have to have delayed gratification. All this time, we thought we were going to be able to go on this vacation. Are your kids still mourning the fact that they couldn't go to vacation last year? No. Then that is an extreme life lesson. Because imagine these kids as an adult, they can wait their turn. And we don't have adults who still have childish ways, because a lot of this over the past year, kids have been able to see how adults, hopefully their parents, have been using good skills, communication skills, relaxation skills. I know that's been a hard one, but just to mitigate anxiety, mental health, all of these things. Point I want to bring up that Jeremiah made, he never shared with me, was he said he saw things that, I've heard, because we didn't see anything that was out of character at home.
Okay.
But what they were saying was out of character for him, as we know him. At school.
Okay.
And so I want to just put a pin there for parents to note that if your teacher, the teacher are saying something different about your kid than you experience at home, it's usually because the kid is having stress at school and their behavior is responding to that stress. Remember, they want something, or they don't want something, or they need something. And we as parents need to figure out which of those three it is.
Wow. You just really schooled us, and I thank you for that. Now, I know that you talked about the times are changing, and a lot of the conversation that I've been seeing so lately was that people really feel as though like virtual school is not helping their children. How is that affecting you as a parent coach now in the society? Do you go in to talk with the kids, or are you just solely parent based and giving them tips on how to help their child virtually?
Another great question. Most of my work is with parents.
Okay.
What I do if I meet with the kids is always to collect information, because what do I want to know from them? What do you want? What don't you want? What do you need? And what do? I become a tattletale. I go back to the parents. I tell them, don't even do this stuff over here. Your kid doesn't even care about that. They want this. They don't want this. Does that make sense to you? And they're like, oh, wow. And then we just come together and create a plan based on what they said. And then I tell them, you better not say anything to them. Don't you say anything. Just implement this change that I'm telling you to implement and watch their behavior change. And that's what happens.
That's good. That's good. And that means that you have to be a very good listener.
Oh, yes.
You have to be, and sometimes people, a lot of times they listen to respond and not listen to basically hear the person, solve the problem, get down to the root of the problem, and then make the needed changes. How has that affected you being a listener now? You're a good listener in your career. How is that being at home, dealing with three kids, three boys at that?
Can we toss it over to
Let's
Jeremiah? He
toss it
will
over to
have to be the
Jeremiah.
one to evaluate
I
me.
think that's a great question.
It is.
You know, and I think even with my mom and I, like, we talk all the time.
Mhm.
And I think that if anything, like her listening skills or my dad's listening skills have probably been passed down through all of us. Even in our personal relationships, and like I always tell you this all the time, like I love listening, and
Yeah, I know.
you talk as much as you want to, like I love to sit there and listen.
You're a
Um,
great listener, Jeremiah. I'm gonna call you after this. Go ahead.
so I like I said, and I think that that's something that's kind of become a part of the culture of maybe our family, is just like, taking the time to really understand one another, like, and understand each other's boundaries, when to give in, and when to take a step back and maybe come back later. And that's something that I learned a lot from my mom specifically, just over the course of time of me growing up, and trying to navigate how to solve some of my own problems as a child. And so we did a lot of listening, a lot of talking, but more importantly, a lot of listening and analyzing and understanding. Um, like she said, what's the issue? What do you need? And what do you want? And trying to figure out solutions from there. So I definitely think that through all of our individual journeys and journeys as a family, that's been something that we've been able to definitely succeed with.
Yeah. And I think families, I think young, not even youth, I think children in general, whether you're a younger person or older person, they value and they appreciate being able to come to their parent
Yeah,
and have a conversation, because a lot of times some people feel as though they can't communicate with their parents.
absolutely.
um what is it like for you being able, like, tell me what it's like for you being able to communicate with your parents and like really get off your chest what you have in a respectful way, get off your chest what you have to say, like why is that important to you?
Oh, it's extremely important. I would say, like, to as kids, I don't think we always feel that way. So like as a little kid, I don't think I always felt like I can just come to my parents and just vent and say whatever I wanted to.
Okay.
As I got older, I started to see, like, a lot of the nature of our conversations evolve. Even trying to navigate my own mental health and stuff like that, I had to go through therapy, and really understand how to, like, um, express myself.
Mhm.
So as I've gotten older, I couldn't be more honest when I say that my parents have become my best friends. Like, I
Mhm.
probably tell them a little bit more than I tell other people, and probably a little bit too much. So and that's what I think is the unique part about our relationship. For majority of our life, my parents have become, or were my parents, were my, like, a structural guideline. But as soon as I turned 18, my parents have been more of an advisory type of, like a friend. I
Yeah.
remember my mom kept kind of telling me, like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's all entirely up to you. And I love that about my parents, that they're just willing to hear. I'm here to listen. I can give you my opinion, but I'm not telling you what to do. Everything is your decision from here on out. But I love that about our relationship, and I truly feel like, uh, less of them being my parents now, they really are just like my friends.
Yeah. Now, for those who don't know,
But
you
I'm
guys
your
are
mama
Yeah,
still.
she always likes to remind me that, but in my heart, they really are my friends, which I think is healthy. Like, if you have a
Mhm.
friend relationship with your parents, that goes a whole lot more than having, like, a hierarchy type of relationship with your parents. Like, I don't feel like they're
I
trying to
agree.
be my boss all the time. Like, I feel like, hey, I can just come to you just because I want to talk.
Hmm.
And
I
I think
agree with
that's
you.
But I do want to clarify, Jeremiah. I don't think our relationship was, I was very authoritative. So you had rules,
yeah.
you
I don't
had to
want that to be
listen.
confused.
I wasn't your friend as a kid.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, I never, like it was him who decided to call me and his, my husband, his friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't our goal to be friendly with them, but we just always respected them. And I think out of respect and love, friendship just happens in any relationship.
Now, if you guys don't mind, can we talk a little bit about mental health?
Sure.
And being able to recognize that, not dealing with it, but taking time to notice it within yourself, notice it within your family, and then take the proper precautions to get help for yourself. Who would like to start?
I'm gonna let my mom go first because through her journey is where I was able to acknowledge my own. So,
okay.
Well, thank you, Jeremiah. I would say I struggled with depression as a kid. I didn't know what it was called. I just remember feeling like I could be in a room with a few people and still feel like I was in a dark place. And even at that time, though, I could hear what people were saying. I could be smiling, I could be laughing, but there was this darkness that I couldn't explain. And so that just kind of went through my teenage years, and I just lived with it. I remember when I started my first job, the stress of it, I would just, I would barely have the energy or the courage. I felt like a ball of fear to get out of bed. And then I had kids, and with each child, it just got progressively worse. And I went to a therapist one time. And, I went in one day and just one session, and she was like, "Well, I think you have bipolar." I never heard of that term. Now these days, that term is like everybody uses it in a derogatory way, and kids know it at a young age. I never heard of the thing until the lady said it to me. And so I never went back. I was like, she has some nerve to label me, and she didn't give me a test or anything. And so it took probably like maybe 4 years after that, because then by that time I had Malachi, which is my youngest son. And about 9 months after having him, I actually had a manic episode and landed in a psychiatric hospital. Can you imagine? I never, as mild and calm as I am as a person, ever thought that would be my story. But I ended up there, and from there, I could no longer deny something was wrong. And thank goodness I ended up with some good mental health providers, and they explained the whole thing to me, helped me to understand how come I couldn't get a test that really proved anything. But based on my history and the fact that I had that manic episode, all signs confirmed that I had bipolar. So you want to take it from there, Jeremiah?
Yeah. Mental health is something that I think is really important to me. And just kind of listening to my mom, I think some of those words have to be normalized, like fear and darkness and suicide, as dark as that word is. People have to start talking about those things, because I think mental health is just as serious as you going to the doctor if you broke your leg. Like, because you want to play football and you want to get back on the field, you need to go get checked out. And with mental health, I think we should carry it with the same respect. For me, I think my journey kind of began in 4th grade. I remember having to be kind of removed from class and having some side conversations with my mom, and having to go see our school counselor. And I always felt a little bit like an outcast, like, why do I have to keep doing this? I was like, no one else in my class does it. And just, I remember going through at such a young age. And I think that's an important thing too, is just that it's kind of crazy to imagine that mental health can strike somebody as early as being a 4th grader. And maybe even sooner, but I definitely had a lot of tools and help at that time. But I wasn't entirely sure what, that was a mental health thing. I didn't really know what mental health was. No 4th grader really does. So I think that where I really got to understand myself was when I was in probably 9th and 10th grade in Zambia.
Okay.
Because around that time, I don't know what I was going through mentally, but I did know that I was having days that were positive, that could have been really high, and then days that were negative that could have been really low. And there was just a lot of consistency between the two. And I remember finally just my mom kind of took the time, and she was like, no, something is not right here. And so that's when I got to go to therapy for really not the first time, but the first time extensively. And shout out to Scott, because he really helped my mindset change. I don't even remember what his last name is, but he was a great therapist. But
Scott Robertson.
But that was one of the great things about therapy, is that it's not something to go to just because you're having rough days. Like, I remember my mom used to make me, even if I didn't want to, like, it could have been Christmas time where I could have been the happiest of my life, but we're going to Scott's today. You need to talk about your positive days just as much as you talk about your negative days.
You better preach, baby.
So Scott was really influential in, helping me navigate some of my issues and understand how to, like, find somewhat of a middle ground in between those negative days, and find ways to constructively, smile and not think that the world is just drowning on top of you. And I remember too, I think that one of the things that was really influential to me, well, I'll say two things. One thing, so when I was in ninth grade, we had this thing called the personal project, because I was at an IB school where they make you do a lot more adult projects overseas, which were pretty hard, but I was able to do something that was really interesting. So I worked with this orphanage that my mom used to work with, called Cassisi's Children's Home or Orphanage. And they had some pretty amazing kids. And I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something with this orphanage, because the kids were always just very friendly, and I loved going there just to hang out with them. And so I ended up doing creating a calendar where I basically chose 12 children. And each calendar had one of 12 kids on each month. Or one kid had their own month. And at the bottom of it was a little bit of a caption about their life, where they came from, how they got to the orphanage, and what they wanted to do. And I remember talking to one of those sisters, her name is Sister Mariola, after doing some of the interviews, and she was saying that, some of these kids, they're opening up to you more than they've opened up to anybody else. And plenty of journalists have come there. And it was that kind of triggered me a little bit, just because some of those stories that I heard were very dark. But those kids, you would have never known it. Up until I decided to do this project, they were nothing but smiles and positivity, that never let their past life or anything that they've been through affect where they were today or their future aspirations. And that was so inspiring to me. And so it kind of was a realization moment, because I was sitting there and, man, like, the nerve of me to feel so down about myself all the time, when there's so many things to smile and wake up and be grateful for. And that's not to minimize anybody's problems, but there's so much in this world too, that you can be happy about. And kind of moving on to my next point, I remember too, as a kid, kind of growing up, if I had a problem that kind of was bad, especially in the morning, it was immediately going to affect the trajectory of my day. Like, if I had a problem, I was like, this day is going to be stupid. This is a stupid day. It's not even worth anything, because the whole thing is going to be bad. And that's a horrible way of thinking.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I was randomly, I don't know if I saw with my mom or just by myself, but I saw this documentary about Ray Lewis. And I remember him saying something about some of this, I guess maybe times that he would have been going through depression or some bad days. And one of the things what he said is that he gave his problems about 5 minutes, just to be angry and vent and scream and break stuff and do as much anger or negativity that he wanted to devote to that issue. He'd get it out in 5 minutes. And after that, he started looking for solutions. And I thought that was one of the most powerful things that I've ever heard, because for me, for so long, I was just letting my whole day be dumb because of that one issue. And after that, I was like, no, there's no purpose of that. Like, there's still 23 more hours that I can have a fantastic day. And I was
thinking about it.
I'm gonna do that. So for now,
look at my baby embracing behavior change.
Yeah, I don't really wish to do that anymore, to be angry because it's cool or it's not cool. I don't wish to be angry at all. So if I have a problem, I'll acknowledge it. If it's upsetting, I'll give it a certain amount of time. But after that, let's look for a way to solve this, because I don't want to waste 23 hours on venting or be angry.
Yeah, and why would you do that? I'm glad that you were able to recognize that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. But Sharoya Ham, I wanted
Yes.
to ask you, um, how has it been for you in this pandemic?
I've seen good, a lot of good, because this is a time I was able to come home and see my son
Mm-hmm.
graduate. It wasn't the traditional graduation, but we were able to pull off one that was memorable, and just I hope, it just, he'll have that to think about, even though he didn't have all of the glitz and the glamour of walking across that big stage of thousands of people looking on. So that was a lovely time to be home, to be with my kids. Normally all three of them are in the US. I would have, during this time, been overseas, and they wouldn't have been able to come see me with the travel ban. So I just made it home before the doors were closed for us to leave Uganda. And we made it home, and I've been home for 9 months, the longest I've been home in 14 years.
Wow.
It was sweet though, because I got to spend so much time with my kids in the US, which we've not done before.
Yeah. How is that for you, Jeremiah, being because I've never experienced anything like that. And I'm gonna come to South Africa.
All
When
right.
when this whole thing is just controlled, and then when
Mhm.
I get the courage to take that long flight, but I'm gonna come
You can
there.
do it.
But how is that for you, Jeremiah, especially on the topic of mental health? How was that for you, just being away as a young male, with everything that's going on in our society, being Black, being away from your parents?
So how is it being away from my parents, or how is it navigating the pandemic?
Both questions.
Okay. um, being away from I'll say being away from my parents, because that's probably the easiest question to tackle first.
Mhm.
I've been doing it for a long time.
Mhm.
I was the first person. My mom always kind of says that the reason that my brothers ended up leaving too is my fault, because I was the first person to go ahead and kind of embrace boarding school at a fairly young age. So I started it around sixth grade, into seventh, and also into seventh grade. Ended up coming back for my excuse me, maybe not even. It may have been, excuse me. I think it was seventh grade into eighth grade, and then I did my ninth and tenth grade, uh, my eighth and ninth grade or something like that in Africa, and then during my ninth or my 10th and 11th. I'm messing the numbers up,
It's
but
okay.
You went to boarding school seventh grade, came
yeah,
back in the ninth grade,
Go
and
ahead,
then we
Mom.
went back to school and back to boarding school in the 11th grade.
thank you. Back on track.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I've done it a couple of times, to the point where being away from them isn't really that difficult for me, as I started so young. But having them come here and then kind of leave again was kind of sad, because it's like, man, we haven't actually done this in a really long time, and so to have them here for almost, was it a year or maybe a little?
No, it's 9 months.
Yeah, that was great, because it was like, even if they became tangible again, like
Yeah.
even if you know they weren't always next to me, like when my mom was in Atlanta, like in my mind I could still pick up and go over there if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So like now having them back over the Atlantic Ocean is like, okay, wow, they're
Yeah.
back.
Back to
they're
reality.
yeah. But yeah, so it's really not that big of a deal for me anymore. But I also know that we talk all the time, so it doesn't. Is my parents are never really a phone, are really only a phone call away, and we talk for however long, laugh about whatever. So um, I think as long as our relationship has always stayed strong, it hasn't really felt too inconvenient to not have them here physically. But I guess navigating the pandemic was hard. I will say that, and kind of contradicting how I said that I used to give my problem or like to give my problems 5 minutes. This was a stupid year. Like 2020 was one that I just didn't want to experience anymore. As like me and many of the other people in this country, so or across the world. It was tough, like not having a traditional graduation. It felt like a lot of things were robbed for me. I had envisioned June and July going exactly how I wanted to, spending it with my family. It was a moment that for 4 years I had it's
been
all
waiting for.
yeah, even kind of just I remember like I'm a huge Bill Cosby fan. Like I wanted that moment to have my parents up in the crowd and then being able to see me walk across the stage, and to not have that was really tough. Not only from a graduation, but also commissioning into the army. It was something that I wanted them to do, because for a long time I wasn't sure how I was going to successfully get through this program, just because of how rigorous it was. And so to have accomplished that personally and not have them be able to see it was tough for me. But I think it wasn't really up until this month, like I was able to really just appreciate slightly 2020. Like, although there was so much negative that we can possibly pull from it, there's so much positive too that I can pull from it as well. Like I was able to have my parents here for 9 months. I was able to see my family, which I don't often get to do. I was able to get the job that I really want, making the salary that I wanted. I was able to commission into the army as a second lieutenant and work with some of my newfound peers.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been a roller coaster, but I am very grateful from the positive things that I was able to pull from 2020, because there was a lot of them.
Good. Now, to shift the conversation a little bit from the pandemic and to kind of wrap up our segment here, I have a couple questions. So, one of my questions is to you, Miss Sharoya Ham, is basically, I shouldn't say basically. My question is, what are some tips that you can give parents who are dealing with children who they may have concern with, or may go, I don't know how I want to word this. They may have concern with, or how do parents deal when kids take their own journey and not the journey they see for their children? That's the question.
Wow. What a big question.
I got it out. Sorry.
And I'm glad you did, because I don't know where I got this from. I do believe my mother, she was really in tune. She asked us a lot of questions, so she knew what we liked. I don't think I was just one to kind of go outside the box. So mom didn't really have too many problems with me. But somehow in raising our kids, they just kind of, it started with Jeremiah. In third grade. But what people have to understand is that living overseas in Cameroon at the time, and that was West Africa, the school that he went to was a day school and boarding school. So his friends, many of his friends were boarders. So he was like, well, why can't I have a sleepover like them? I just want to sleep over at school. But we're like, no, child, we're Americans. We don't do that. But he would ask us every year. And then situations happened where we found ourselves in a country that had a little civil war. And so it just made sense at that point. He would have, if we would have kept him in the house with us and traveled to back to the US, he would have been in 3 schools in 1 school year. And we just said, no, this is not what we wanted for our kids. So if he wants to go to boarding school, let's give it a try. So that's what we did. Now that's boarding school. But nowadays, kids have all kind of issues and desires, and they come into their parents. Some of the things are scary. I want to empathize with parents, but I also want to know parents to know the damage we can do in our tone, in our responses. If you can't handle something, you just say to your child, I wasn't expecting that. I need a moment to really think about it.
Yeah.
And I promise you, we're gonna come back to this topic. We're gonna talk about it. And then when you come back and talk to your child, have questions. And what we talked about in the beginning is listen without a prepared response.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way. I believe through questions, you can find the answers. When we go and we talk to our friends, that's okay. But many of them, if they haven't gone through it, what are they going to tell you? But our kids are smart, they're intelligent. And the key for parents, what I want them to understand is getting your child one-on-one when they're having a good time and you start saying, you know what, you mentioned this, I really want to understand. Can you explain to me what you're thinking? You will be amazed at the conversations that kids can have. But the key is getting them when they're in a good spirit. So you go treat them to the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And on the car ride back home, after pandemic,
mm-hmm.
they are a captive audience. So you go like, remember so-and-so, you said that? I want to know what you were thinking. That's number 2. You have to deal with your children individually if you want them to actually tell you the truth. If you're trying to sit at the dinner table and talk to one child in front of everybody, you can forget it.
Mm-hmm. Jeremiah, why did you make that face?
I don't know. I think that's probably true because I don't think any kid really wants to feel like they're being on the spot. So when you're able to kind of have those like one-on-one conversations and get a kid to open up, and sometimes outside of their element, like, hey, let's go get ice cream, and trick them into having a conversation. Like those are where you can kind of create new constructive reinforcement and learning. So the dinner table probably isn't the best environment to do that in front of everybody, but but yeah, you can definitely get a lot out of your kids just getting them to have a one-on-one and honest conversation with you.
Good. I appreciate those tips because parents are really gonna appreciate the tips that you gave, because one thing I know for sure, every family is different, every parenting style is different, and I feel as though you gave general information that each parents can apply to their own situation, whether your kid is 2 or 22. So I appreciate you for that. But I'm a big person on manifestation, and it's a part of my show. I ask this question to my guests. I want to know from each of you, what are things that you manifest in your lifetime from, let's just say, from 2 to 5 years from now? What do you see in your career, your journey, your mother and son relationship, manifestation, in a quick 2 minutes from each person? Go ahead. Who wants to start?
You want to go, Jeremiah? Let me hear what you say.
I think one of the things that I feel like I want to continue to manifest is probably just networking and really learning. One of the things that even with my job, like I always tell them, like, I just want to be here to learn. And even kind of when I was interviewing, I was like, I don't really care about pay. I don't really care too much about status or whatever you can kind of do for me. But like what I want to do is be able to learn. And I think that's kind of what took me away from my previous job to where I am now. Is that's kind of really what I'm passionate about. If you can teach me something and continue to grow me as an individual, then man, that does so much, because I want to be able to market myself and continue to put myself in the best position to be able to achieve or grasp whatever would be best for me. And so that's really what I'm looking forward to doing within the next 4 to 5 years. I think as a 22-year-old going into 24 or 25, that's what I want to be able to do is say, like, man, in 3 years, look how much I was able to learn, like, look where I am now. And I really want to see how much I can take from everything from undergrad and hopefully moving on into grad school, and see how much I can really take all those things and put them into use. So yeah, I would say that, and just, continuing to grow myself as an individual, and creating deeper relationships with family and friends. Those are things that I probably end up manifesting. Everything that can make me smile at the end of the day.
You have a very big smile. Thank you.
I think for me, it's the same. I just long to be a person of presence and impact. Meaning when I walk into your world, I want to learn from you. I want to let you know that I care. I want you to feel a sense of presence that is warm and lets you know that we have connected. That is important to me. In terms of work, I really want to leave a legacy of a book, of a curriculum called Parenting CEOs, Children Equipped for Our Society.
Have you started writing?
Haven't started writing, but in
Okay.
my coaching, I'm building curriculum. So if anything I want to manifest, I want that book and curriculum to manifest so that parents can understand this is about raising children equipped for our society.
Yeah. Y'all heard that first on Tamia Talks Podcast.
You did. I have not told that to anyone.
That was exclusive.
Publicly.
That was
That's exclusive.
Very exclusive. I thank y'all. Now, another thing that I do to wrap it up, give me 3 words to describe yourselves. Who's going first? Think a little bit, because some people get a little caught up here. 3 words to describe you, Jeremiah.
Man. Listener. Or excuse me, I don't want to listen. I think we'll say attentive.
Okay.
Or that's synonymous, right?
Attentive?
Synonymous, yeah.
Okay. We'll say attentive, leader, and adventurous. We'll go with that.
Okay.
Good.
Wrap
I
it up
would
for
say
Jeremiah.
fun,
Okay.
a love bug,
Love
and
bug.
if there's one word that captures me, is teacher.
Wow. Whew, this conversation was deep, but I appreciate y'all. I thank y'all. And I feel as though, as a teacher, the teacher always wraps it up. So let's wrap it up. Miss Sharoya Ham, give us something to wrap up this podcast. Needed to know the parents.
For all parents, the beginning of behavior change doesn't start with your kids. It starts with you, the parent. You hold the power. It's not that, you are to blame yourself or why do I have to change my behavior? No, it is a valuable thing to change our behavior just in all of our relationships. We need boundaries. We need people to be able to say, oh, I can do this with her, but I can't do that. The word boundary has just been misunderstood so many times as this bad thing, but it's a really good thing. And when we put clear boundaries up and our kids know, oh, this is what mom expects with this, and this I shouldn't do at this time, it changes their behavior because kids like consistency. I mean, we all do as parents. I mean, as individuals, as human beings, when we can predict something, we behave better. But when it's all kind of madness happening, and sometimes mom is okay, sometimes dad is okay, and then all of a sudden they wild out. It's like the kid is confused. So I just want to say to parents, it's okay, pull back, do some self-assessment and say, what can I do better? That's it. Not what can I change in them, but what can I do better? And if you just make one change, just try to be as consistent as possible. What I try to tell parents, the best way is 3 days consecutively. I don't care where, if it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's fine. Just try to do whatever change you want 3 days consecutively, not 3 days in the week, 3 days consecutively, and you'll see, oh shoot, I did it, I changed and they changed. And a lot of times people don't understand the quickest way to change bad behavior is to focus on what they're doing well. So I want to leave it right there. You want to change your child's bad behavior, pay attention to what they're doing good.
Gems.
Wow. All right, we done. There's nothing else to be said. Shout out to y'all.
Tamia,
I love you
what
guys.
you said. It goes from 2 to 22. I mean, it's just, these principles are just simple. They're not easy, but they're simple. They're not easy to implement, but they're simple.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you guys.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
Tell Uncle Tavio I said I love him. Shout out to South Africa. All my people over there, to Jeremiah in Philly. I'm coming to see you.
Okay.
All right.
All righty.
Love you guys. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tamia Talks, baby.